Shand is a world-renowned Scotch whisky bottler known for providing connoisseurs with the finest and rarest Scotch whiskies. He travels the globe exploring different cultures to discover the liquid treasures of the world. Please join the Scotsman as the Spirit's Ambassador.
The all-important part of whisky is in the tasting, but the process before we get it into the bottle is reasonably complex. We need to take samples from a cask. We need to nose those samples. Nosing is the act of smelling the whiskies. And from your nose you can detect lots and lots of different aromas. And those aromas make up the characteristics of a whisky and how we select. Single malts are selected for particular characteristics related to the distilleries. Blends are made from many different single malts mixed together, matured, married together over a period of time and then bottled. So the first process is nosing, and then we can go to taste. Black Bull is a blend that I have produced. In this particular one we have 8 whiskies and 8 single malts and 2 grains. And as you can see, I get samples from my warehouse, I take them, I nose them, as we did before, and I mix them together. I marry them together over a period of time. Now all of those whiskies have different characteristics, so if I want sweetness, I might add a higher concentration of a sweeter malt. If I want it to be a little bit dry, I'll add the higher concentration. Or if I want it a little bit peaty, I'll take a sample of an Islay whisky and add that to the mix to make it slightly peatier. I'll leave this to marry in my glass for an hour. I will do loads of different mixes until I find the perfect mix. This can take years and years and years of practice. It certainly has with me. It's taken me at least 20 years to be able to select my blends. And finally, when I feel that it meets with my approval, we will test it amongst friends and decide if they like it too. And if they like it, we're pretty sure that it could go out into the market. I'm going to take you through a tasting of my Black Bull 12-year-old blend. So if you just pause your television for a few seconds, go and get a bottle, and we'll go through it together. Now you've got your dram in front of you. We're going to first nose it. If you just put it to your nose, open your mouth a little, and sniff back, just draw it back, draw the spirit into your nose, and what that does is it coats this little thing at the back of your nose called an epithelium, and that detects loads and loads of different aromas. Now in the case of my Black Bull Blend 12, I've specifically gone for a sweet honeyed nose. And how I did this was by picking particular distilleries that were prevalent with that sweetness or that honey. But in the background, you'll notice a little bit of smoke, tiny little bit of smoke, and that's from the island of Islay. That sort of aroma is particular of that island in the west coast of Scotland. There's a little bit of island as well in it, this sort of note of a kind of seaweed, salty note in the background. And that just balances all of these elements, balance the whisky out. And along with the grain whisky is the base of any blend. And in the case of the Black Bull blend, 50% is grain, 50% is malt. So it's a really nice base with this over emphasis on sweetness and honey. And it's got a really nice hue at the back, which is the smokiness, but very, very light smoke. Proof is in the tasting. That's at full strength out of the bottle. But we as traditionalists like to take a little bit of water with our whiskies, and down in the tray here, I've got some water. Just ordinary water, Don't use tap water because there's chlorine in it, and chlorine and whiskey don't go. You want to have something, even bottled water, and just put in a little drop. And that little drop opens up the whiskey. Whiskey has got oils in it, and those oils break when water is poured in, so it allows the aromas to come out. And you'll find it opens up your whiskey far more than you would just get if you have a straight whiskey out of the bottle. The aromas, it's totally different. There's so many more aromas available. And also it helps in tasting. When you come to taste the whiskey, it's lighter, especially in the case of 100 proof. Far easier to drink, and also gives you that beautiful mouthfeel. Slange. On my travels around the world as a spirits ambassador, I meet many people who ask some crazy questions, but none more crazy than my friend George in California, the Yank.
Not to get off on too much of a tangent, but what's the difference in the taste between a younger versus an older?
You can't just sum it up in young and old, because a young Islay whiskey is very smoky.
Okay.
A young lowland whiskey is very floral.
Okay.
But as time goes by, it will mature into a totally different thing. If you take an old Islay, the peatiness, the phenolics, while it matures in a cask, it's absorbed by the wood.
Okay.
So after 30 or 40 years, the smokiness is gone, and it's been replaced by this really floral feel. Look at this.
Okay.
Without jumping too far. That's
sherry. Now that seems very dark to me. Obviously, it is darker than any of the others.
I'll tell you a little bit about the casks. You've got different sort of wood that we mature in. All wood is oak. It's the only.
That's the only wood
you use. We use
okay.
is oak, and we use a specific type of glass to try whiskey.
Okay.
The glass has got a nice cup, so the whiskey warms a little. It's got a closed vent, closed end, so you can put your nose in, and it concentrates the aromas.
Okay.
In the top of the glass. So we use this, in the business to nose our whiskies.
Okay. So you have the other glass since you just had your nose in that. But I'm just call me crazy. But
it's called the Glencairn glass.
Okay. It's called a what?
Glencairn.
Glencairn.
Family in Glasgow produce this glass, and they sell millions of them worldwide.
Are glens just valleys? I just don't know why.
They are valleys.
Okay, because I hear Glen, everything's Glenlivet, Glenfiddich, Glen.
Glenfiddich.
Fiddick?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, Fiddich.
Fiddich. But it says it's Fiddich.
I know.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. It's
I mean, the language is quite young in the United States, but it's going to develop.
All right, so did you want to have this? Because I know you also have a bottle that you and your family have pioneered.
Family bottle, yeah. Okay, what we'll do is we'll put that one down, and we'll try the one that was this one.
3 generations, which we've talked about previously.
33-year-old.
And so you worked, your dad worked, you worked.
My father managed the distillery and was distiller.
Okay, what year was that?
Distillery, oh God, 50 years ago he
was the manager of the Glendronach distillery? Okay.
50 years, he retired in 1984.
Okay.
And I started in the distillery in the 70s.
Okay.
And this was made in the 70s. So it was distilled, cask, made by me.
33 old for the 3 generations, including your
son
Andrew.
So what we're going to do is we're going to, did you like that? Cork.
It is.
The true whiskey has got a cork.
Cork.
The wine people have gone into plastic and rubber.
What's the alternative when you say true whiskey has cork? What are those?
No alternative.
Okay, so there's
no alternative.
Okay,
it can only be a cork.
I'm sure the imposters did.
If you get a whiskey with a plastic top, with a plastic stopper,
then it's
throw it away. You don't want anything to do with it.
Okay, then it's just a fraud.
Yeah, it's just a total fraud.
Okay.
So pour yours first. Okay, we won't pour too much, just enough to.
So let me ask you this. I've heard, and while we have this, and I'm looking forward to tasting it, and this is a taste. This is the size of a taste right here. What is this called? It's not really a full
It's
shot.
called a dram.
A dram. Okay, a dram. I've heard a lot of people talk about a lot of different ways to drink Scotch. I've seen people say neat like this. soda, water, over ice. What is your view on this?
Well, it's your personal preference. If you want to, mess a whiskey up by putting Coke in it,
Well,
or
right
even
there.
ice,
Okay.
then that's up to you. But I'll explain why we don't
Okay.
put Coke. I mean, this is a single malt Scotch whiskey.
Okay.
Do you really want to mess this up and shove a Coke in?
Probably.
It'll mask the taste. Totally mask. It'll add too much sugar, too much sweetness, and you don't really want that. You want to be able to get the characteristics of the whiskey coming from the glass. So if you nose it for a start, and I'll explain a little bit. Now, what do you get there when you nose that? What does it smell like?
I can smell the alcohol. I can smell the alcohol. It's pretty
Yeah.
strong. It smells strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is reasonably strong, yeah. The exact strength is, in American terms, it's 102 proof. That's great.
That seems pretty high.
That's pretty-
by
pretty
American
strong.
terms, that seems
Yeah.
pretty high. By any terms, actually, I don't know.
It's quite strong, but what we do
Scots do. But
what we do is when a whiskey's distilled, when it's made in the distillery in the beginning, it's distilled at about 72 to 74% alcohol.
Okay.
That's ABV, which is about 130, 140 proof.
Okay.
Really quite strong. It's filled into a cask at 63.5,
Okay.
and over a period of time, there is a loss as it matures in the cask. There's a loss in strength and a loss in volume. Loss in strength means that over the years it'll go, from 63.5 to 60 to 59 to 58. In this particular case, after 33 years, it's reached 51.4 ABV, 102 proof. That loss, there's a loss in volume as well. So not only strength, but the cask will lose whiskey, and that's called the angel share. If it doesn't lose whiskey, then it ain't maturing. So you've got an interaction between air and the whiskey.
So it evaporates.
And the conduit, the catalyst is wood.
Mhm.
And what happens is that the air meets the whiskey in the middle of the wood,
Okay.
creates this sort of syrupy effect
All right.
as it hits each other, and there's currents in the cask. Through winter, through summer, there's little currents moving around, goes into the wood, sucks out the syrup, adds the colour, because this goes into a cask completely clear. When it's distilled, Scotch whisky is completely clear.
Okay.
From the still, it's poured into a cask, and then this beautiful amber colour appears.
Really? So that's amazing. I didn't realize that it went in clear.
You've got to remember what whiskey is. Whiskey is made from water, beautiful, pure Scottish water, from barley, a grain, some yeast added, and some heat. It's that natural. It's a very, very natural product.
So all of this color and flavor comes primarily from the time it spends in the wood.
From the wood. 70% of all flavour comes from the wood.
Okay, one more question before we drink this. The 33. Why that number? Where, who, and when decides when to open that cask? You've got this cask in there.
It's up to the guy or the girl that selects it, the blender. We call them blenders. It's maybe not the best of terms for the selector of the
blender sounds.
the whiskey. Blender sounds fine, but we are always nosing and tasting casks.
So you can open up a cask and taste it.
Yeah, we took
It's not
samples.
sealed airtight where you would.
Well, you had to fill it in the first place, so
Right.
there's a hole in the top with a cork that goes into it.
Okay,
It's a
it's
wooden
just
stopper.
a cork that's okay.
And that's right. So you just pull it and take a sample.
Okay, so you can periodically sample it and see if it's ready.
Well, I used to be, when I started in the industry as a warehouseman, that's what I did. I used to tap casks. I had a big hammer. Well, when I say a hammer, it was a shaft with a wooden top, and I would just walk around tapping them to hear that if they were going too far down, losing too much volume,
Too much angel share.
too much angel shit, because
Damn
that
it, damn those
losses money.
angels,
And being Scottish,
Right.
money's very
Yeah,
important.
Exactly.
So, so what we did with the selector, when we think it's reached its optimum for that particular year or type of whiskey, we'll open
That's
the
when you
cask.
pull it. You say, okay,
We'll
this,
pull it,
this is it.
We'll
and-
fill it,
Okay.
and in this case, we thought the 33-year-old was just a perfect whiskey. And it also, in some respects, as far as the marketing is concerned, it tied in with
Absolutely.
Three
No,
generations.
it's absolutely makes
three
sense.
generations of the family, 33-year-old, everything just
Yeah.
was perfect. And the whiskey, in my opinion, when I selected it, is pretty near perfect.
Do we just guzzle it? What's the
No,
the
no,
protocol
no.
here?
I've got to explain a little bit about the selection as well. When we pull that cask in the warehouse, we look at a number of things. If you look at this, if you swill it around your glass and just watch it for a second, you'll see there's legs appear. You see that oiliness?
Yes.
So what we've got here is a real natural spirit.
Mhm.
It's got all the oils, all the taste in it. Okay?
Okay.
Now, to open up a whiskey, when we pull that sample in the warehouse, we add a little water. And what this does, because there's an oily meniscus on top of that glass, okay? So you're going to get an aroma, but you're not going to get all the aroma unless you take a little bit of water and add it, and I mean a tiny little drop of water. That's probably too much because I don't have a measure. It's just a bottle. And what that does,
And that
I'll
wasn't
do it
much,
right. It's not just even a drop will do it. And you'll see that it goes a little bit cloudy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The legs run a little bit quicker down the glass. There's oily legs,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see it's like if you ever see a car at a filling station on a wet day and there's a little drop of petrol.
Mm-hmm.
It'll just spread like wildfire. This
Mhm.
beautiful
A
colour.
rainbow of
It's the same here. It's because it's opening it up. And what's happening here is that the whiskey's opened up, and they'll get the aromas. It's multiplied.
it really has. It
It
really has.
has opened up the whiskey. So don't be afraid to put a little bit of water in your glass.
Okay.
We really focus on having the natural whisky, and we look at the NC2 range here. That's non-chill filtered and non-coloured. This range here starts in the younger end from 10 years of age up to 16 years of age, and fantastic range of whiskies all across Scotland. You can get that within the NC2 range. We then move up in terms of age across to the rare old whiskies. You can see across here, this example here is a Glen Scotia. That's moving up from 17 years old through to 39 years old. And again, it doesn't mean to say that an older whisky is better than a younger whisky. It's got a different profile, and it costs us more to lay it down and mature the product, so it's more expensive on shelf. An older whisky will have more cask character within it, a little bit more body and weight to it. The younger whisky will have fruitier, zestier notes within it. So it's a different profile, a different occasion. That's the rare old range. We then move up into the peerless. This is really the kind of the top of the tree in terms of our age malts. This is 40 years and above. Example we have here is a Glenrothes, 1968. All of our whiskies are focusing on single cask. We want the distillery and the casks to shine through. We don't want to see generic whiskies. In our position, we want to show the real character of the whisky shining through. And really that's when you see it with the peerless range, 40-year-old whiskies really shining through. So you've got a balance of the maturity of the cask, and we still retain some of the younger notes coming through because of our cask selection quality control process. So that's really the peerless range. And really what we've also got on top of that, that's our single cask malt range. We then move into some of the blended and vatted malts, and I can take you through down the bottom here. We've got a range of Islay vatted whiskies. We've got the Big Smoke 40 and the Big Smoke 60. And really what we're doing there is about bringing out the real character of Islay malts, vatting it together, and we're not wanting overly peaty character, but we're wanting the real character of each of the individual distilleries to shine through. And that's what you get with the Big the Big Smoke 40 and the Big Smoke 60. A fantastic product there. And we also have Old Reekie, which is a 10-year-old Islay malt as well. So again, a little bit more maturity in the cask, a little bit more weight in the product, a little bit more length on the finish on the palate. So again, very much worth trying and a very popular range for us there. We then move into some more kind of innovative products, and one example would be Black Bull. We've got, in this 40-year-old interpretation, 8 malts specifically chosen, and we blend it. This is 90% malt whisky, 10% grain. If you look at some other blends, they might be 20%, 25% malt, and then the rest is all grain whisky, so it's a very high malt content. We've also got our 12-year-old, so a younger profile whisky, but again, it's very powerful. You'll get a wheaty, kind of weighty, powerful whisky going through on the nose itself, and then on the profile, you can still differentiate the individual malts within it. So that's the Black Bull range, and it's a real strong, just like the Animal, it's a real powerful whisky, nice and weighty when you actually nose it. And it's actually quite smooth and got a lot of character on the palate. Nice finish on it, nice length. We then move through into the Octave range. I mentioned innovation. Octave is another innovation. Octave is a 50-litre cask, which historically was used when distilleries were selling to domestic households. We decided to actually look at maturing the whisky in the 50-litre Octave cask to see how it would help the whisky develop. And what we discovered was it added a whole lot of depth to the whisky itself. So we store it anywhere between, I would say, 2 months to 4 months. It's a 50-litre cask. There's more surface area in contact with the wood itself. It's a new oak with a sherry finish. And in the younger whiskies, it kind of shows the whiskies what they might mature into. Adds a little bit more weight and a bit more depth. On the older whiskies, because it's a new oak with a sherry finish, you're actually bringing back some of the younger notes, the fruity, zesty elements that you get. So we're actually adding dimension to the whisky. This is a rarest of the rare collection. This particular one's a Cappadonic, a fantastic whisky. What it represents is distilleries that are actually now mothballed or in fact have been destroyed. And we want these whiskies to remain singing and shouting out in the whisky world. And connoisseurs really look for these whiskies. So you've seen the range now, and it's all about quality, and it's all about a distinctive voice for the whisky that represents the true distillery character.